What happens when a righteous man loses everything? The answer might reshape your understanding of faith. Imagine being tested not once, but repeatedly by pain, loss, and even silence from heaven itself. Could unwavering trust in God still stand when all blessings are stripped away? Job's story reveals the soul of true endurance. The story of Job, the greatest test of faith of all time, like you've never seen before. There was a man in the land of whose name was Job. This is the story of a man who lost everything but never lost his faith. A story about pain, friendship, questioning, and loyalty. A journey that makes us reflect on suffering and how we respond when life falls apart around us. Let's get to know Job, a man who even in the worst trials held on to his integrity. His story begins in times of peace and prosperity, but soon descends into storms that will test every fiber of his being. This is a narrative of loss, of friendships that disappoint, and of seeking answers when heaven seems silent. But above all, it's the story of a real man who, even when broken, chose not to abandon his faith. Job lived in a distant land. He was unlike most men. He was special. In chapter 1-1, the Bible tells us, "There was a man in the land of whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil." Job wasn't just good. He was incredibly wealthy. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and had many servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East. His family was large and close-knit. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters who loved to hold feasts in each other's homes. And Job, being a devoted father, always looked out for them. After each feast, he would offer sacrifices to God on their behalf. As verse 5 says, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." Job did this regularly. But one day something extraordinary happened in heaven. While Job lived peacefully on earth, the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan was among them. The Lord asked Satan, "Where have you come from?" Satan replied, "From roaming throughout the earth, going back and forth on it." Then the Lord said, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." But Satan responded, "Does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But now stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord accepted the challenge, but with one condition. "Very well then. Everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself, do not lay a finger." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord, ready to test Job. The day of the test came like a storm. While Job's children were eating and drinking in the home of their oldest brother, messengers began to arrive, one after another, each with terrible news. The first came breathless. The oxen were plowing and the donkeys were grazing nearby when the Sabeans attacked and made off with them. "They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who escaped to tell you." While he was still speaking, another arrived. "Fire of God fell from the heavens and burned up the sheep and the servants, and I am the only one who escaped to tell you." A third messenger rushed in. The Chaldeans formed 3 raiding parties and swept down on the camels and made off with them. "They put the servants to the sword, and I am the only one who escaped to tell you." Then came the final and most devastating blow. "Your sons and daughters were feasting and drinking wine at the oldest brother's house, when suddenly a mighty wind swept in from the desert and struck the 4 corners of the house. It collapsed on them, and they are dead. And I am the only one who escaped to tell you." In a single day, Job lost everything: his possessions, his servants, and worst of all, his 10 children. The pain must have been unbearable. The Bible describes Job's reaction in verse 20. At this, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Then he fell to the ground in worship. What Job said next reveals his extraordinary faith. Though crushed by grief, he declared, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." And then the Bible notes something crucial. In all this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. Satan had lost the first round. Sometime later, another gathering took place in heaven. Once again, the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan was among them. God again pointed to Job and said in chapter 2-3, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason." But Satan wasn't finished. He replied, "Skin for skin. A man will give all he has for his own life. But now stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." The Lord agreed again with one restriction. "Very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." Satan went out and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Job took a piece of broken pottery to scrape himself as he sat among the ashes, a sign of deep mourning and suffering. His wife, broken by their losses, said to him, "Are you still maintaining your integrity? Curse God and die." But Job replied, "Wisely, as recorded in verse 10, you are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" Even in this darkest hour, Job did not sin in what he said. News of Job's suffering spread, and 3 of his friends came to visit him: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They agreed to come together to comfort him. But when they saw him from a distance, they hardly recognized him. They began to weep aloud, tore their robes, and sprinkled dust on their heads, signs of deep grief. Then they did something remarkable. They sat with him on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights, not saying a single word, because they saw how great his suffering was. That silence was a gesture of compassion, but it wouldn't last. Soon his friends would begin to speak, and their words would bring more pain than peace. After 7 days of silence, Job finally spoke. His pain ran so deep that he cursed the day of his birth. In chapter 3-1, we read, "After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day of his birth. His lament is heartbreaking. May the day of my birth perish, and the night that said a boy is conceived. That day may it turn to darkness." Job wished he had never existed. Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? Job questioned why God gives life to those destined for suffering. Why is life given to those in misery and life to the bitter of soul? To those who long for death that does not come, who search for it more than for hidden treasure. He expressed his current state with painful words. "For sighing has become my daily food. My groans pour out like water. What I feared has come upon me. What I dreaded has happened to me. I have no peace, no quietness. I have no rest, but only turmoil." After this outburst, Eliphaz, the eldest of Job's friends, decided to respond. He began with seemingly gentle words in chapter 4-2. "If someone ventures a word with you, will you be impatient? But who can keep from speaking?" Eliphaz reminded Job how he had once comforted others. "Consider now who being innocent has ever perished. Where were the upright ever destroyed? As I have observed, those who plow evil and those who sow trouble reap it." Here's Eliphaz's logic. "If you're suffering, you must have sinned," he continued. "Yet man is born to trouble as surely as sparks fly upward." Eliphaz then shared a vision he had. "Amid disking dreams in the night, when deep sleep falls on people, fear and trembling seized me and made all my bones shake. A spirit glided past my face and the hair on my body stood on end." The message of the vision was clear. Can a mortal be more righteous than God? Can a man be more pure than his Maker? If God places no trust in his servants, if he charges his angels with error, how much more those who live in houses of clay, whose foundations are in the dust? In chapter 5, Eliphaz continued his speech urging Job to seek God. But if I were you, I would appeal to God. I would lay my cause before him. He performs wonders that cannot be fathomed, miracles that cannot be counted. Eliphaz ended his speech with a promise that sounded almost like a threat. We have examined this, and it is true, so hear it and apply it to yourself. He was suggesting that if Job would admit his sin and turn to God, his suffering would end. In chapter 6, Job replied to Eliphaz, expressing the depth of his pain. If only my anguish could be weighed and all my misery be placed on the scales, it would surely outweigh the sand of the seas. No wonder my words have been impetuous. Job explained the reason behind the intensity of his lament. The arrows of the Almighty are in me. My spirit drinks in their poison. God's terrors are marshaled against me. He felt abandoned by his friends. Anyone who withholds kindness from a friend forsakes the fear of the Almighty. But my brothers are as undependable as intermittent streams. Job challenged his friends. Now be so kind as to look at me. Would I lie to your face? Relent, do not be unjust. Reconsider, for my integrity is at stake. In chapter 7, Job turned directly to God. Does not man have hard service on earth? Are not his days like those of a hired laborer? Like a slave longing for the evening shadows, or a hired man waiting eagerly for his wages, so I have been allotted. Months of futility and nights of misery have been assigned to me. His anguish was so great that he wished for death. My body is clothed with worms and scabs. My skin is broken and festering. My days are swifter than a weaver's shuttle, and they come to an end without hope. Job questioned why God watched him so closely. What is mankind that you make so much of them, that you give them so much attention, that you examine them every morning and test them every moment? Will you never look away from me or let me alone even for an instant? After Job's reply, Bildad took the floor in chapter 8. His speech was even more direct than Eliphaz's. How long will you say such things? Your words are a blustering wind. Does God pervert justice? Does the Almighty pervert what is right? Bildad got straight to the point. When your children sinned against him, he gave them over to the penalty of their sin. He was suggesting that Job's children died because of their own wrongdoing. Bildad advised Job to seek God. But if you will seek God earnestly and plead with the Almighty, if you are pure and upright, even now he will rouse himself on your behalf and restore you to your prosperous state. He used metaphors to describe the fate of the wicked. Such is the destiny of all who forget God, so perishes the hope of the godless. What they trust in is fragile. What they rely on is a spider's web. They lean on the web, but it gives way. They cling to it, but it does not hold. Bildad concluded with a presumption. Surely God does not reject one who is blameless or strengthen the hands of evildoers. The message was clear. If Job were truly blameless, God wouldn't have rejected him. Job answered Bildad in chapter 9, acknowledging God's power. Indeed, I know that this is true, but how can mere mortals prove their innocence before God? Though they wished to dispute with him, they could not answer him 1 time out of 1,000. He went on to describe God's immense power. God's wisdom is profound. His power is vast. Who has resisted him and come out unscathed? He moves mountains without their knowing it and overturns them in his anger. He shakes the earth from its place and makes its pillars tremble. Job expressed his frustration at being unable to defend himself before God. Even if I were innocent, my mouth would condemn me. If I were blameless, it would pronounce me guilty. He questioned divine justice. If calamity brings sudden death, he mocks the despair of the innocent. The earth is given. into the hands of the wicked. He covers the eyes of its judges. If it is not he, then who is it? In chapter 10, Job continued his lament. My soul is weary of my life. I will give free rein to my complaint and speak out in the bitterness of my soul. He addressed God directly. I will say to God, do not condemn me, but tell me what charges you have against me. Does it please you to oppress me, to spurn the work of your hands, while you favor the plans of the wicked? Job recalled how God had formed him. Your hands shaped me and made me. Will you now turn and destroy me? Remember that you molded me like clay. Will you now turn me to dust again? After Job's response, it was Zophah's turn to speak in chapter 11. He began with a rebuke. Will no one answer this flood of words? Shall a man full of talk be justified? Will your idle talk silence others? Will you mock without shame? Zophah suggested Job's punishment was lighter than deserved. Can you fathom the mysteries of God? Can you probe the limits of the Almighty? They are higher than the heavens. What can you do? They are deeper than the realm of the dead. What can you know? Know this, God has forgotten some of your iniquity. He urged Job to repent. If you devote your heart to him and stretch out your hands to him, if you put away the sin that is in your hand and allow no evil to dwell in your tent, then you will lift up your face without shame. You will stand firm and without fear. Zophar closed with a warning, but the eyes of the wicked will fail and escape will elude them. Their hope will become a dying breath. In chapter 12, Job responded with irony. Doubtless, you are the only people who matter and wisdom will die with you. But I have a mind as well as you. I'm not inferior to you who does not know all these things. He defended his situation. I have become a laughingstock to my friends. Though I called on God, and he answered, a mere laughingstock, though righteous and blameless, Job acknowledged God's power and wisdom. Ask the animals and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you. Or speak to the earth, and it will teach you. Or let the fish in the sea inform you. In his hand is the life of every creature, and the breath of all mankind. In chapter 13, Job voiced his desire to speak directly to God. I will surely speak to the Almighty. I desire to argue my case with God. You, however, smear me with lies. You are worthless physicians, all of you. He warned his friends, keep silent and let me speak. Then let come to me what may. Why do I take my life in my hands and risk my life? Though he slay me, yet I will hope in him. I will surely defend my ways to his face. Job made a direct plea to God. How many wrongs and sins have I committed? Show me my offense and my sin. Why do you hide your face and consider me your enemy? In chapter 14, Job reflected on human frailty. Man born of woman is of few days and full of trouble. He springs up like a flower and withers away like a fleeting shadow. He does not endure. He compared human life to a tree. There is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, it will sprout again, and its new shoots will not fail. But a man dies and is laid low. He breathes his last, and where is he? Job expressed a longing to rest until God's wrath had passed. If only you would hide me in the grave and conceal me till your anger has passed. If only you would set me a time and then remember me. He ended on a note of despair. But a man dies and is laid low. He breathes his last. And where is he? As the water of a lake dries up or a riverbed becomes parched and dry, so he lies down and does not rise till the heavens are no more. People will not awake or be roused from their sleep. In chapter 15, Aleph has spoke again now with sharper accusations. Would a wise person answer with empty notions or fill their belly with the hot east wind? Would they argue with useless words, with speeches that have no value? He accused Job of you, undermine piety, and hinder devotion to God. Your sin prompts your mouth. You adopt the tongue of the crafty. Eliphaz questioned Job's wisdom. Are you the first man ever born? Were you brought forth before the hills? Do you listen in on God's counsel? Do you have a monopoly on wisdom? He claimed to speak. From greater experience, what do you know that we do not know? What insights do you have that we do not have? Gray-haired and aged men are on our side, older than your father. He accused Job of rejecting divine comfort. Why has your heart carried you away? And why do your eyes flash so that you vent your rage against God and pour out such words from your mouth? He reminded Job of man's sinful nature. What is man that he could be pure? Or one born of woman that he could be righteous? If God places no trust even in his holy ones, and the heavens are not pure in his eyes, how much less mortals, who are vile and corrupt, who drink up evil like water. Eliphaz continued in verse 17, describing the fate of the wicked. Listen to me, and I will explain. Let me tell you what I have seen, what the wise have declared, hiding nothing received from their ancestors, to whom alone the land was given, when no foreigner moved among them. He described the constant torment of the wicked. All his days the wicked man suffers torment. The ruthless man through all the years stored up for him. Terrifying sounds fill his ears. When all seems well, marauders attack him, Eliphaz said. The wicked live in constant fear. He despairs of escaping the realm of darkness. He is marked for the sword. He wanders about for food, saying, "Where is it?" He knows the day of darkness is at hand. According to Eliphaz, those who defy God face certain judgment. Distress and anguish fill him with terror. Troubles overwhelm him like a king poised to attack because he shakes his fist at God and vaunts himself against the Almighty. He used vivid imagery to describe the punishment of the wicked, though he heaps up fat on his face and makes his waist bulge with flesh. He will dwell in ruined cities, in houses where no one should live, destined to become heaps of rubble. Eliphaz continued, he will not prosper, nor will his wealth endure, nor will his possessions spread across the land. He will not escape the darkness. A flame will wither his shoots, and by the breath of God's mouth, he will vanish. He concluded with a warning about the futility of trusting in vanity. Let him not deceive himself by trusting in what is worthless, for he will get nothing in return. Before his time is up, it will all be over, and his branch will not flourish. He will shake off his unripe grapes like a vine and shed his blossoms. Like an olive tree, Eliphaz finished with a grim prophecy. For the company of the godless will be barren, and fire will consume the tents of those who take bribes. They conceive trouble and give birth to evil. Their womb prepares deceit. With these harsh words, Eliphaz closed his second speech to Job. Convinced that his friend was suffering because of hidden sin and that only repentance could restore his fortunes. After hearing Eliphaz's harsh words, Job could take no more. He was tired of the empty sermons of his friends. In chapter 16, he vents, "I have heard many things like these miserable comforters. Are you all? Is there no end to your long-winded speeches?" Job was frustrated. His friends spoke as if they knew everything, but they couldn't feel his pain. In verse 4, he says, "I also could speak like you if you were in my place. I could string words together against you and shake my head at you." Instead of comfort, Job felt his friends were only adding to his suffering. Their words were like knives. "You have worn me out with your talk. God has turned me over to the wicked and thrown me into the hands of the ungodly." He then described how he felt attacked not only by his friends, but by God himself. "I was at peace, but he shattered me. He seized me by the neck and crushed me. He has made me his target. His archers surround me without mercy. He pierces my kidneys and spills my bile on the ground. Again and again, he bursts upon me. He rushes at me like a warrior." Yet even through this agony, Job asserts his innocence. "Yet my hands have not done violence, and my prayer is pure." In a poignant moment, Job pleads that his blood not be hidden. "O earth, do not cover my blood. May my cry never be laid to rest." He feels close to death yet still clings to a glimmer of hope. Even in his deepest despair, Job speaks of a witness in heaven. Even now my witness is in heaven. My advocate is on high. My friends scoff at me, but my eyes pour out tears to God. In chapter 17, Job continues, speaking of death drawing near. My spirit is broken. My days are cut short. The grave awaits me. He laments the absence of true friends. Mockers surround. Nay, my eyes must gaze at their hostility. Job feels he is being treated like a guilty man, though he is innocent. The upright are appalled at this. The innocent are aroused against the ungodly. His hope for this life is fading. Where then is my hope? Who can see any hope for me? Will it go down to the gates of Sheol? Will we descend together into the dust? In chapter 18, Bildad speaks irritated by Job. When will you end these speeches? Be sensible, and then we can talk. Why are we regarded as cattle and considered stupid in your eyes? He then paints a terrifying picture of the fate of the wicked, implying that Job's suffering fits this pattern. Surely the light of the wicked is snuffed out. The flame of his fire stops burning. The light in his tent becomes dark. The lamp beside him goes out. According to Bildad, the wicked live in constant terror. The vigor of his steps is weakened. His own schemes throw him down. His feet take him into a net, and he walks into a snare. A trap seizes him by the heel. A snare holds him fast. A rope lies hidden for him on the ground. A noose lies in his path. The final destiny of the wicked, as Bildad sees it, is grim. Terrors startle him on every side and dog his every step. Calamity is hungry for him. Disaster is ready when he falls. It eats away parts of his skin. Death's firstborn devours his limbs. He continues with this fearful vision. He is torn from the security of his tent and marched off to the king of terrors. Fire resides in his tent. Burning sulfur is scattered over his dwelling. To build the wicked vanish completely, below his roots dry up and above his branches wither. The memory of him perishes from the earth. He has no name in the land. He is driven from light into darkness and is banished from the world. He ends with sharp words. He has no offspring or descendants among his people, no survivor where once he lived. People of the West are appalled at his fate. Those of the East are seized with horror. Surely such is the dwelling of the wicked. This is the place of those who do not know God. In chapter 19, Job replies, expressing his pain over the way his friends have treated him. How long will you torment me and crush me with words? 10 times now you have reproached me. Are you not ashamed to wrong me? Job insists his condition is the result of God's actions, not personal sin. Even if it is true that I have erred, my error remains my concern alone. If indeed you would exalt yourselves above me and use my humiliation against me, then know this. It is God who has wronged me and drawn his net around me. He describes feeling abandoned by everyone. Though I cry violence, I get no response. Though I call for help, there is no justice. He has blocked my way so I cannot pass. He has shrouded my paths in darkness. He has stripped me of my honor and removed the crown from my head. Job's suffering has affected all his relationships. My brothers have gone away. My acquaintances are completely estranged from me. My relatives and close friends have failed me. The guests in my house have forgotten me. My female servants count me a stranger. They look at me as though I were a foreigner. I summon my servant, but he does not answer, even though I beg him with my own mouth. Even his marriage was affected. My breath is offensive to my wife. I am loathsome to the sons of my own mother. Even little boys despise me. When I appear, they ridicule me. Amidst this complete despair, Job makes one of the strongest declarations of faith in the entire Bible. I know that my Redeemer lives and that, in the end, he will stand upon the earth. And after my body has been destroyed, yet in my flesh I will see God. I myself will see him with my own eyes. I and not another. How my heart yearns within me. Job finishes with a warning to his friends. If you say, how shall we pursue him since the root of the matter lies in him? Then you yourselves should fear the sword. For wrath brings the punishment of the sword, so that you may know there is a judgment. In chapter 20, Zophar, agitated, replies to Job, my troubled thoughts prompt me to answer because I am greatly disturbed. I hear a rebuke that dishonors me, and my understanding inspires me to reply. Zophar then describes how he views the short-lived joy of the wicked. Surely you know how it has been from of old, ever since mankind was placed on the earth, that the mirth of the wicked is brief. The joy of the godless lasts but a moment. Though the pride of the godless reaches to the heavens and his head touches the clouds, he will perish forever. Like his own dung, those who have seen him will say, where is he? To Zophar, the wicked vanish quickly. Like a dream, he flies away, no more to be found. Vanished like a vision of the night, the eye that saw him will not see him again. His place will look on him no more. Zophar claims the wicked must return what they gained unjustly. He must give back the wealth he gained and will not enjoy the profit from his trading. For he oppressed the poor and left them destitute. He seized houses he did not build. Punishment, according to Zophar, is unavoidable. Surely he will have no respite from his craving. He cannot save himself by his treasure. Nothing is left for him to devour. His prosperity will not endure. Zophar details divine retribution. In the midst of his plenty, distress will overtake him. The full force of misery will come upon him. When he has filled his belly, God will vent his burning anger against him and rain down his blows on him. To Zophar, there's no escape. Though he flees from an iron weapon, a bronze-tipped arrow pierces him. It is drawn out of his body. The gleaming point comes out of his liver. Terrors will come over him. Total darkness is reserved for his treasures. A fire unfanned will consume him and devour what is left in his tent. Zophar concludes with certainty. The heavens will expose his guilt. The earth will rise up against him. A flood will carry off his house, rushing waters on the day of God's wrath. This is the portion God allots to the wicked, the heritage appointed for them by God. In chapter 21, Job responds asking for their attention. Listen carefully to my words. Let this be your consolation. Bear with me while I speak. And after I have spoken, mock on. Job challenges his friends. Simplistic logic, pointing out that many wicked people prosper. Why do the wicked live on, growing old and increasing in power? They see their children established around them, their offspring before their eyes. Their homes are safe and free from fear. The rod of God is not upon them. He describes the good life of the wicked. Their bulls never fail to breed. Their cows calve and do not miscarry. They send forth their children as a flock. Their little ones dance about. They sing to the music of tambourine and harp. They make merry to the sound of the flute. They spend their years in prosperity and go down to the grave in peace. Job quotes the wicked as saying to God, they say to God, leave us alone. We have no desire to know your ways. Who is the Almighty that we should serve him? What would we gain by praying to him? He questions the oversimplified theory of his friends. How often is the lamp of the wicked snuffed out? How often does calamity come upon them? The fate God allots is in his anger. Are they like straw before the wind, like chaff swept away by a gale? Job rejects the idea that children should pay for their parents' sins. You say, God stores up the punishment of the wicked for their children. Let him repay the wicked, so that they themselves will experience it. Job concludes that death makes all equal. One person dies in full vigor, completely, secure and at ease, well-nourished, and with bones full of marrow. Another dies in bitterness of soul, never having enjoyed anything good. Side by side they lie in the dust, and worms cover them both. He accuses his friends of comforting with falsehoods. I know full well what you're thinking. The schemes by which you would wrong me. You say, where now is the house of the great? Man, the tent in which the wicked lived? Have you never asked those who travel? Have you paid no regard to their accounts? On the day of calamity, the wicked are spared. On the day of wrath, they are delivered. Job ends his speech by challenging his friend's wisdom. So how can you console me with your nonsense? Nothing is left of your answers but falsehood. In chapter 22, Eliphaz speaks for the last time, now directly accusing Job of specific sins. Can a man be of benefit to God? Can even a wise person benefit him? What pleasure would it give the Almighty if you were righteous? What would he gain if your ways were blameless? Eliphaz makes serious accusations without evidence. Is it not because of your great wickedness? Are not your sins endless? You demanded security from your relatives for no reason. You stripped people of their clothing, leaving them naked. You gave no water to the weary and withheld food from the hungry. Though you were a powerful man, owning land, an honored man living on it. The accusations continue. You sent widows away empty-handed and broke the strength of the fatherless. That is why snares are all around you. Why sudden peril terrifies you. Eliphaz suggests Job thinks God can't see his sins. Is not God in the heights of heaven and see? How lofty are the highest stars? Yet you say, what does God know? Does he judge through such darkness? Thick clouds veil him so he does not see us as he goes about in the vaulted heavens. He accuses Job of following the path of the wicked. Will you keep to the old path that the wicked have trod? They were carried off before their time, their foundations washed away by a flood. Eliphaz ends with a piece of advice for Job to return to God, submit to God, and be at peace with him. In this way, prosperity will come to you. Accept instruction from his mouth and lay up his words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be restored. If you remove wickedness far from your tent and throw your gold into the dust, your gold of Oir among the rocks and the ravines, then the Almighty will be your gold, the choicest silver for you. He promises blessings if Job repents. Then you will find delight in the Almighty and will lift up your face to God. You will pray to him, and he will hear you, and you will fulfill your vows. What you decide on will be done, and light will shine on your ways. When people are brought low, and you say, lift them up, then he will save the downcast. He will even deliver the one who is not innocent, who will be delivered through the cleanness of your hands. In chapters 23 and 24, Job responds to Eliphaz. He begins by expressing his desire to present his case directly to God. Even today my complaint is bitter. His hand is heavy in spite of my groaning. If only I knew where to find him, if only I could go to his dwelling. I would state my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. Job trusts that God would listen. I would find out what he would answer me and consider what he would say to me. Would he vigorously oppose me with great power? No, he would not press charges against me. There the upright can present their case before him, and I would be delivered forever by my judge. But Job cannot find God. But if I go to the east, he is not there. If I go to the west, I do not find him. When he is at work in the north, I do not see him. When he turns to the south, I catch no glimpse of him. Still Job holds on to his confidence. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold. My feet have closely followed his steps. I have kept to his way without turning aside. I have not departed from the commands of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my daily bread. In chapter 24, Job questions why God allows injustice to persist in the world. Why does the Almighty not set times for judgment? Why must those who know him never see his days? He then describes the evils he sees. Some remove boundary stones, They pasture flocks they have stolen. They drive away the orphan's donkey and take the widow's ox in pledge. They thrust the needy from the path and force all the poor of the land into hiding. He describes the suffering of the poor like wild donkeys in the desert. The poor go about their labor of foraging food. The wasteland provides food for their children. They gather fodder in the fields and glean in the vineyards of the wicked. Lacking clothes, they spend the night naked. They have nothing to cover themselves in the cold. Drenched by mountain rains, they hug the rocks for lack of shelter. He continues, exposing the cruelty of the wicked. The fatherless child is snatched. From the breast, the infant of the poor is seized for a debt. Lacking clothes, they go about naked. They carry the sheave but still go hungry. Despite all this, Job notices that the wicked often seem to prosper, yet they cry out in the city. The wounded groan for help, but God charges no one with wrongdoing. Job details the crimes of murderers and other evildoers. There are those who rebel against the light, who do not know its ways or stay in its paths. When daylight is gone, the murderer rises up, kills the poor and needy, and in the night becomes a thief. Job closes with a challenge. If this is not so, who can prove me false and reduce my words to nothing? In chapter 25, Bildad speaks briefly. Dominion and awe belong to God. He establishes order in the heights of heaven. Can his forces be numbered? On whom does his light not rise? He questions how any human could be righteous before God. How then can a mortal be righteous before God? How can one born of woman be pure? If even the moon is not bright, and the stars are not pure in his eyes, how much less a mortal who is but a maggot, a human being who is only a worm? Job responds in chapters 26 and 27, beginning with irony, how you have helped the powerless, how you have saved the arm that is feeble. What advice you have offered to one without wisdom, and what great insight you have displayed. Then Job affirms his own understanding of God's power. The realm of the dead is naked before God. Destruction lies uncovered. He spreads out the northern skies over empty space. He suspends the earth over nothing. He wraps up the waters in his clouds. Yet the clouds do not burst under their weight. He marvels at God's greatness. He marks out the horizon on the face of the waters for a boundary between light and darkness. The pillars of the heavens quake, aghast at his rebuke. By his power, he churned up the sea. By his wisdom, he cut Rahab to pieces. By his breath, the skies became fair. His hand pierced the gliding serpent. And these are but the outer fringe of his works. How faint the whisper we hear of him. Who then can understand the thunder of his power? In chapter 27, Job swears to maintain his integrity. As surely as God lives, who has denied me justice, the Almighty who has made my life bitter, as long as I have life within me, the breath of God in my nostrils, my lips will not say anything wicked and my tongue will not utter lies. He refuses to concede to his friends. I will never admit you are in the right till I die. I will not deny my integrity. I will maintain my innocence and never let go of it. My conscience will not reproach me as long as I live. He wishes for his enemies to share the fate of the wicked. May my enemy be like the wicked, my adversary. Like the unjust, he declares the hopelessness of the wicked. For what hope have the godless when they are cut off? When God takes away their life, does God listen to their cry when distress comes upon them? Will they find delight in the Almighty? Will they call on God at all times? Job insists you will teach them about God. I will teach you about the power of God. The ways of the Almighty I will not conceal. He lays out the destiny of the wicked. This is the portion of a wicked man, the heritage appointed to him by the Almighty. However many his children, the sword awaits them. His offspring will never have enough to eat. The plague will bury those who survive him, and their widows will not weep for them. The wealth accumulated by the wicked will not last. Though he heaps up silver like dust and piles up clothes like clay, the righteous will wear them, and the innocent will divide thee. Silver. The house he builds is like a moth's cocoon, like a hut made by a watchman. He lies down rich for the last time. When he opens his eyes, all is gone. Job ends by describing the fate of the wicked. Terrors overtake him like a flood. A storm snatches him away in the night. The east wind carries him off, and he is gone. It sweeps him out of his place like a whirlwind. It hurls itself against him without mercy as he flees headlong from its power. People clap their hands at him and hiss him out of his place. In chapter 28, Job presents a poem about wisdom. He begins by describing mankind's ability to extract hidden treasures. There are mines for silver and places where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth and copper is smelted from ore. Job highlights human ingenuity. Man puts an end to the darkness. He searches out the farthest recesses for ore in the blackest darkness. Far from human dwellings he cuts a shaft. In places forgotten by foot, far from men he dangles and sways. But he contrasts this ability with the inability to find wisdom. But where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? Man does not comprehend its worth. It cannot be found in the land of the living. Not even wealth can buy it. The deep says it is not in me. The sea says it is not with me. It cannot be bought with the finest gold, nor can its price be weighed in silver. It cannot be bought with gold from Ophir, with precious onyx or sapphire. Job underscores the priceless value of wisdom. Gold and crystal cannot compare with it, nor can it be exchanged for jewels of fine gold. Coral and jasper are not worthy of mention. The price of wisdom is beyond rubies. The topaz of Cush cannot compare with it. It cannot be bought with pure gold. Then he asks again, where then does wisdom come from? Where does understanding dwell? It is hidden from the eyes of every living thing, concealed even from the birds of the air. The answer can only come from God. Destruction and death say only a rumor of it has reached our ears. God understands the way to it, and he alone knows where it dwells, for he views the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. Job reveals the true source of wisdom. When he established the force of the wind and measured out the waters, when he made a decree for the rain and a path for the thunderstorm, then he looked at wisdom and appraised it. He confirmed it and tested it, and he concludes with this essential truth. And he said to man, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to shun evil is understanding. In chapter 29, Job reminisces longingly about his life before disaster. How I long for the months gone by, for the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone upon my head, and by his light I walked through darkness. He remembers his prosperity and his place in the community. Oh, for the days when I was in my prime, when God's friendship blessed my house, when the Almighty was still with me and my children were around me, when my steps were bathed in cream and the rock poured out streams of oil for me. Job describes his role as a respected leader. When I went to the gate of the city and took my seat in the public square, the young men saw me and stepped aside, and the old men rose to their feet. The chief men refrained from speaking and covered their mouths with their hands. The voices of the nobles were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouths. He was admired for his justice. Whoever heard me spoke well of me, and those who saw me commended me, because I rescued the poor who cried for help, and the fatherless who had none to assist them. The one who was dying blessed me. I made the widow's heart sing. Job clothed himself in righteousness. I put on righteousness as my clothing. Justice was my robe and my turban. I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy. And I took up the case of the stranger. He used his power to defend the weak. I broke the fangs of the wicked and snatched the victims from their teeth. I thought, I will die in my own house, my days as numerous as the grains of sand. He describes his former honor. My roots will reach to the water, and the dew will lie all night on my branches. My glory will remain fresh in me. The Ebia ever new in my hand. People sought his counsel. Men listened to me expectantly, waiting in silence for my advice. After I had spoken, they spoke no more. My words fell gently on their ears. They waited for me as for showers and drank. In my words, as the spring rain, his presence inspired hope. When I smiled at them, they scarcely believed it. The light of my face was precious to them. I chose the way for them and sat as their chief. I dwelt as a king among his troops, as one who comforts mourners. In chapter 30, Job contrasts his former life with his current state of humiliation. But now they mock me, men younger than I, whose fathers I would have disdained to put with the dogs of my flock. He describes those who now scorn him. What use was the strength of their hands to me, since their vigor had gone? Haggarded from want and hunger, they gnawed the dry ground in desolate wastelands. They gathered salty herbs among the bushes, and the roots of broom trees were their food. They were banished from human society, shouted at as if they were thieves. They lived in the gullies of the valleys, in caves, and among the rocks. They howled among the bushes and huddled in the undergrowth. They were children of fools, the offspring of nameless men driven out of the land. The contrast with his past is painful, and now their sons mock me in song. I have become a byword among them. They detest me and keep their distance. They do not hesitate to spit in my face. Now that God has unstrung my bow and afflicted me, they throw off restraint in my presence. Job describes the attacks he suffers. At my right hand, the mob rises. They lay snares for my feet and build siege ramps against me. They tear up my path. They work to destroy me with no one to stop them. They come like a wide breach. They surge forward amid the ruins. He describes his present condition. Terrors overwhelm me. My dignity is driven away by the wind, and my safety vanishes like a cloud. Job speaks of his physical pain. Now my life ebbs away. Days of suffering grip me. At night, piercing pain racks my bones, and the gnawing agony never rests in his great power. God seizes my garment. He grasps me by the collar of my tunic. He feels ignored by God. He throws me into the mud, and I am reduced to dust and ashes. I cry out to you, O God, but you do not answer. I stand, but you merely look at me. You have turned cruel to me. With the might of your hand you oppose me. Job sees death approaching. You lift me up on the wind and make me ride it. You toss me about in the storm. I know you will bring me down to death, to the place appointed for all the living. He laments that his pleas are unheard. Surely no one reaches out their hand to a heap of ruins or cries for help in disaster. Did I not weep for those in trouble? Was my soul not grieved for the needy? Yet when I hoped for good, evil came. When I looked for light, darkness came. Job speaks of his relentless anguish. My heart is troubled and does not rest. Days of suffering confront me. I go about blackened, but not by the sun. I stand up in the assembly and cry for help. I have become a brother to jackals, a companion of owls. My skin grows black and peels. My body burns with fever. My harp is turned to mourning, and my flute to the sound of those who weep. In chapter 31, Job makes a solemn oath defending his integrity. He refuses to accept the unfounded accusations of his friends. I made a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully at a young woman. Job begins in verse 1 declaring his commitment to moral purity. He then asks, what is the portion from God above, or the heritage from the Almighty on high? Is it not ruin for the wicked, disaster for those who do wrong? Confident in his integrity, Job invites God to examine him. Does he not see my ways and count all my steps? If I have walked with falsehood, or my foot has hurried after deceit, Let God weigh me in honest scales, and he will know that I am blameless. He continues with potential sexual sins. If my heart has been enticed by a woman, or if I have lurked at my neighbor's door, then may my wife grind grain for another, and may other men sleep with her. Job understands the seriousness of such sin, for that would have been a shameful act, a crime deserving judgment. It is a fire that burns to destruction. It would have uprooted my harvest. He speaks about his treatment of his servants. If I have denied justice to my servants when they had a grievance against me, what will I do when God confronts me? What will I answer when called to account? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one form us both within our mothers? He speaks of his generosity to the poor. If I have denied the poor their desires, or let the eyes of the widow grow weary, if I have eaten my morsel alone without sharing it with the fatherless, and how he cared for the needy from youth. From my youth I reared them as a father would, and from my mother's womb I guided the widow. Job shows his compassion. If I have seen anyone perishing for lack of clothing, or the needy without garments, and their hearts did not bless me for warming them with the fleece from my sheep, he denies putting trust in wealth. If I have put my trust in gold, or said to pure gold, you are my security. If I rejoiced over my great wealth, the fortune my hands had gained, he also rejects idolatry. If I have looked at the sun in its radiance, or the moon moving in splendor, and my heart was secretly enticed, and my hand offered them a kiss of homage, these also would be sins to be judged, for I would have been unfaithful to God on high. He did not rejoice in the downfall of his enemies. If I rejoiced at my enemy's misfortune, or gloated when evil overtook him, I have not allowed my mouth to sin by invoking a curse against their life. Job speaks of his hospitality. No stranger had to spend the night in the street, for my door was always open to the traveler. He did not try to hide his sins. If I concealed my sin as people do, hiding my guilt in my heart, he addresses his relationship with the land. If my land cries out against me, and all its furrows are wet with tears, if I have devoured its yield without payment, or broken the spirit of its tenants, Job ends his oath with a powerful challenge. Then let briars come up instead of wheat, and stinkweed instead of barley. The words of Job are ended. In chapter 32, a new character enters the scene. As Job's three friends stop responding, a young man named Elihu, son of Barachel, the Buzite of the family of Ram, became very angry with Job for justifying himself rather than God. Elihu is also angry with the three friends because they had failed to refute Job and yet had condemned him. He had held back because of his youth. I am young in years, and you are old. That is why I was fearful, not daring to tell you what I know. I thought age should speak. Advanced years should teach wisdom. But it is the spirit in a person, the breath of the Almighty, that gives them understanding. It is not only the old who are wise, not only the aged who understand what is right. He criticizes Job's friends. I find no wisdom among you. So I say, listen to me. I too will tell you what I know. Elihu feels compelled to speak. The words within me are like pent-up fire, like new wine skins ready to burst. I must speak to find relief. I must open my lips and reply. He promises impartiality. I will show no partiality to anyone, nor will I flatter any man. For if I was skilled in flattery, my Maker would soon take me away. In chapter 33, Elihu speaks directly to Job. But now, Job, listen to my words. Pay attention to everything I say. I am about to open my mouth. My words are on the tip of my tongue. My heart is sincere, and my lips will speak what I know honestly. Elihu reminds Job of their shared origin. The Spirit of God has made me. The breath of the Almighty gives me life. Answer me if you can. Prepare yourself and confront me. I am just like you before God. I too was formed from clay. He then challenges Job's statements. You said, I am pure without transgression. I am clean and there is no guilt in me. Yet God finds reasons to oppose me. He considers me his enemy. He puts my feet in shackles and watches all my paths. Elihu asserts that God speaks in many ways. God speaks in one way and then another, though no one perceives it. In dreams, in visions of the night when deep sleep falls on people as they slumber in their beds. He may speak in their ears and terrify them with warnings, to turn them from wrongdoing and keep them from pride, to preserve them from the pit, their lives from perishing by the sword. He describes how suffering is another way God speaks. A man may be chastened on a bed of pain with constant distress in his bones, so that his body finds no nourishment and his bones once hidden now stick out. His soul draws near to the it, and his life to the messengers of death. Elihu then speaks of restoration. Yet if there is an angel at his side, a mediator, 1 in 1,000, to tell a man what is right for him, to be gracious to him and say, "Spare him from going down to the pit. I have found a ransom for him." Then his flesh is renewed like a child's. He is restored to the days of his youth. He explains God's purpose. He prays to God and is favored by him. He sees God's face and shouts for joy. He is restored by God to his righteous state. Then he goes to others and says, "I have sinned and perverted what was right, but I did not get what I deserved. God has redeemed me from going down to the pit, and I will live to enjoy the light." Elihu concludes this part with an observation. God does all these things to a man twice, even 3 times, to turn back his soul from the pit, that the light of life may shine on him. In chapters 34 to 37, Elihu continues his speech. He begins chapter 34 by calling the wise to listen. "Hear my words, you wise men. Listen to me, you men of knowledge. For the ear tests words as the tongue tastes food." He criticizes Job's claims. Job says, "I am innocent, but God denies me justice. Although I am right, I am considered a liar. My wound is incurable, though I am without sin. What man is like Job, who drinks scorn like water? He keeps company with evildoers. He associates with the wicked." Elihu defends God's justice. "Far be it from God to do evil, from the Almighty to do wrong. He repays everyone for what they have done. He brings on them what their conduct deserves. It is unthinkable that God would do wrong, that the Almighty would pervert justice." He speaks of God's sovereignty, who put him in charge of the earth, who appointed him over the whole world. If he were to withdraw his spirit and breath, all humanity would perish together, and mankind would return to the dust. Elihu questions Job's wisdom. Can one who hates justice govern? Will you condemn the just and mighty one? Is he not the one who says to kings, "You are worthless," and to nobles, "You are wicked"? He speaks of God's omniscience. God's eyes are on the ways of men. He sees all their steps. There is no deep darkness, no shadow of death where evildoers can hide. In chapter 35, Elihu questions whether Job's righteousness has any effect on God. "Do you think this is just? You say, 'I am more righteous than God.' For you also ask, 'What advantage will it be to me? What profit will I have more?' Then if I had sinned, I will answer you and your friends as well. Look up to the heavens and see. Observe the clouds which are higher than you. If you sin, how does that affect God? If your sins are many, what does that do to him? Who explains that cries without faith go unheard? People cry out under a load of oppression. They plead for relief from the arm of the powerful. But no one says, 'Where is God my Maker, who gives songs in the night? Who teaches us more than the beasts of the earth, and makes us wiser than the birds in the sky?' He does not answer when people cry out because of the arrogance of the wicked." In chapter 36, Elihu continues, "Bear with me a little longer, and I will show you that there is more to be said in God's defense. I get my knowledge from afar. I will ascribe justice to my Maker. Be assured that my words are not false. One who has perfect knowledge is with you. He describes God's care for the righteous. God is mighty, but does not despise anyone. He is mighty and firm in his purpose. He does not keep the wicked alive, but gives the afflicted their rights. He does not take his eyes off the righteous. He enthrones them with kings and exalts them forever. Elihu explains how suffering can teach. But if people are bound in chains held fast by cords of affliction, he tells them what they have done, that they have sinned arrogantly. He makes them listen to correction and commands them to repent of their evil. He warns Job, beware that no one entices you by riches. Do not let a large bribe turn you aside. Would your wealth or even all your mighty efforts sustain you through distress? Do not long for the night when people are taken away from their homes. Elihu praises God's power. How great is God beyond our understanding! The number of his years is past finding out. He draws up the drops of water which distill as rain from the mist. The clouds pour down their moisture, and abundant showers fall on mankind. In chapter 37, Elihu continues speaking about natural wonders. At this my heart pounds and leaps from its place. Listen to the roar of his voice, to the rumbling that comes from his mouth. He unleashes his lightning beneath the whole heaven and sends it to the ends of the earth. After that comes the sound of his roar. He thunders with his majestic voice. He describes winter. He says to the snow, fall on the earth, and to the rain, be a mighty downpour, so that all men he has made may know his work. He stops everyone from working. The animals retreat to their dens and remain in their lairs. Elihu speaks of storms and God's control over the weather. The storm comes from his chamber and cold from the driving winds. By the breath of God, ice is given, and the broad waters are frozen. He loads the clouds with moisture. He scatters his lightning through them. They swirl about, turning at his direction to do whatever he commands them on the face of the earth. He concludes by speaking of God's purposes. He brings it about for punishment, or for watering his land, or to show his love. Elihu challenges Job. Listen to this. Job, stop and consider God's wonders. Do you know how God controls the clouds and makes his lightning flash? Do you know how the clouds hang poised? Those wonders of him who has perfect knowledge. He continues, you whose clothes get hot when the land lies still beneath the south wind, can you help him spread out the skies hard as a mirror of cast bronze? Elihu finishes his speech by preparing Job to encounter God. We cannot draw up our case because of our darkness. Should he be told that I want to speak? Would anyone ask to be swallowed up now? No one can look at the sun bright as it is in the skies after the wind has swept them clean. Out of the north he comes in golden splendor. God comes in awesome majesty. The Almighty is beyond our reach and exalted in power. In his justice and great righteousness he does not oppress. Therefore men fear him. He does not regard those who think they are wise. In chapter 38, God himself enters the debate. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. This marks the turning point of the book. God finally speaks. The deep divine response begins with a piercing question. Who is this that obscures my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. God takes Job back to creation. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone while the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted? For joy the Lord questions Job about the sea. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness? When I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place? When I said this far you may come, and no farther here is where your proud waves halt? God questions Job's control of the day. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. The Lord continues with the depths. Have you journeyed to the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been shown to you? Have you seen the gates of the deepest darkness? Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. God challenges Job's knowledge of natural phenomena. What is the way to the abode of light? And where does darkness reside? Can you take them to their places? Do you know the paths to their dwellings? Surely you know, for you were already born. You have lived so many years. He asks about snow and rain. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow, or seen the storehouses of the hail, which I reserve for times of trouble, for days of war and battle? What is the way to the place where the lightning is dispersed, or the place where the east winds are scattered over the earth? Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain and a path for the thunderstorm to water a land where no one lives? An uninhabited desert to satisfy a desolate wasteland and make it sprout with grass. God asks about the skies. Does the rain have a father who gives birth to the drops of dew from whose womb comes the ice? Who gives birth to the frost from the heavens when the waters become hard as stone? When the surface of the deep is frozen, he questions Job's knowledge of the stars. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or lead out the bear with its cubs? Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set up God's dominion over the earth? In chapter 39, God continues with questions about the animal kingdom. Do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of the lions when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in a thicket? Who provides food for the raven when its young cry out to God and wander about for lack of food? He speaks of mountain goats. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her thorn? Do you count the months you till they bear? Do you know the time they give birth? God mentions the wild donkey. Who let the wild donkey go free? Who untied its ropes? I gave it the wasteland as its home, the salt flats as its habitat. It laughs at the commotion in the town. It does not hear a driver's shout. He questions Job about the wild ox. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? Will it stay by your manger? At night, can you hold it to the furrow with a harness? Will it till the valleys behind you? Can you rely on its great strength? Will you leave your heavy work to it? Can you trust it to haul in your grain and bring it to your threshing? Claw. God speaks of the ostrich. The wings of the ostrich flap joyfully, but are they the pinions and plumage of love? She lays her eggs on the ground and lets them warm in the sand, unmindful that a foot may crush them, that some wild animal may trample them. She treats her young harshly, as if they were not hers. She cares not that her labor was in vain, for God did not endow her with wisdom or give her a share of good sense. Yet when she spreads her feathers to run, she laughs at horse and rider. God speaks of the horse. Do you give the horse its strength, or clothe its neck with a flowing mane? Do you make it leap like a locust, striking terror with its proud snorting? It pours fiercely in the valley and rejoices in its strength. It charges into the fray. It laughs at fear, afraid of nothing. It does not shy away from the sword. The Lord speaks of the hawk and the eagle. Does the hawk take flight by your wisdom and spread its wings toward the south? Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high? It dwells on the cliffs and spends the night there. A rocky crag is its stronghold. From there it looks for food. Its eyes detect it from afar. Its young ones feast on blood. And where the slain are, there it is. In chapter 40, God directly challenges Job. The Lord said to Job, "Will the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? Let him who accuses God answer him." Then Job replied to the Lord, "I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. Job's answer, though brief, is rich in humility. Then Job replied to the Lord, I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. This is a pivotal moment for Job. Before the majesty of the divine, he acknowledges his smallness. After lengthy speeches in self-defense, Job now realizes how limited his words have been. Putting his hand over his mouth is a gesture of reverence and silence. He understands he had spoken of things he did not fully comprehend. God continues speaking to Job in the rest of chapter 40. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Would you discredit my justice? Would you condemn me to justify yourself? Do you have an arm like God's? And can your voice thunder like His? Then adorn yourself with glory and splendor, and clothe yourself in honor and majesty. Unleash the fury of your wrath. Look at all who are proud and bring them low. Look at all who are proud and humble them. Crush the wicked where they stand. Bury them all in the dust together. Shroud their faces in the grave. Then I myself will admit to you that your own right hand can save you. The Lord then speaks of a mighty creature, Behemoth. Look at Behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. What strength it has in its loins! What power in the muscles of its belly! Its tail sways like a cedar. The seamless of its thighs are tightly knit. Its bones are tubes of bronze, its limbs like rods of iron. It ranks first among the works of God. Yet its maker can approach it with his sword. God describes this creature's habitat. The hills bring it their produce, and all the wild animals play nearby. Under the lotus plants it lies, hidden among the reeds in the marsh. The lotuses conceal it in their shadow. The poplars by the stream surround it. A raging river does not alarm it. It is secure, though the Jordan should surge against its mouth. Can anyone capture it by the eyes or trap it and pierce its nose? In chapter 41, God speaks of another fearsome creature, Leviathan. Can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook or tie down its tongue with a rope? Can you put a cord through its nose or pierce its jaw with a hook? Will it keep begging you for mercy? Will it speak to you with gentle words? Will it make an agreement with you for you to take it as your slave for life? Can you make a pet of it like a bird or put it on a leash for the young women in your house? God continues describing the impossibility of subduing this creature. Will traders barter for it? Will they divide it up among the merchants? Can you fill its hide with harpoons or its head with fishing spears? If you lay a hand on it, you will remember the struggle and never do it again. Any hope of subduing it is false. The mere sight of it is overpowering. No one is fierce enough to rouse it. Who then is able to stand against me? The Lord emphasizes Leviathan's might. Who has a claim against me that I must pay? Everything under heaven belongs to me. I will not fail to speak of Leviathan's limbs, its strength, and its graceful form. Who can strip off its outer coat? Who can penetrate its double coat of armor? Who dares open the doors of its mouth ringed with fearsome teeth? God continues the description. Its back has rows of shields tightly joined together. Each is so close to the next that no air can pass between them. They are bound to one another. They cling together and cannot be separated. Its snorting throws out flashes of light. Its eyes are like the rays of dawn. Flames pour from its mouth. Sparks of fire shoot out. The strength of Leviathan is unmatched. Strength resides in its neck. Terror dances before it. The folds of its flesh are tightly joined. They are firm and immovable. Its chest is hard as rock, hard as a lower millstone. When it rises up, the mighty are terrified. They retreat before its crashing blows. Leviathan is impenetrable. The sword that reaches it has no effect, nor does the spear or the dart or the javelin. Iron it treats like straw and bronze like rotten wood. Arrows do not make it flee. Sling stones are like chaff to it. A club feels like a piece of straw, and it laughs at the swish of the lance. God concludes his description. Its underside is covered with jagged shards, leaving a trail in the mud like a threshing sledge. It makes the depths churn like a boiling cauldron. It stirs up the sea like a pot of ointment. Behind it, it leaves a glistening wake. One would think the deep had white hair. Nothing on earth is its equal, a creature without fear. It looks down on all that are proud. It is king over all who are arrogant. Through the descriptions of Behemoth and Leviathan, God reveals to Job his immense power as creator. If Job cannot stand against these fearsome creatures, how could he possibly challenge the authority of the one who made them? God's questions show Job that his knowledge and power are infinitely small compared to the Lord's. In chapter 42, Job finally understands. His response reveals a deep transformation. Then Job replied to the Lord, "I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted." Job acknowledges his limitations. You asked, "Who is this that obscures my counsel without knowledge?" Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. He continues, showing how his understanding has changed. You said, "Listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." This is the central transformation of the book. Job never receives direct answers to his questions about suffering. Instead, he gains something far more valuable, a personal encounter with God. The difference between hearing about and seeing is immense. Job moves from a theoretical knowledge of God to a real lived experience of his presence. That changed everything for him. Job's repentance isn't about a specific sin, but rather his presumptuous attitude in questioning God's governance. Now he realizes he spoke of things beyond his understanding. His reaction isn't one of fear or defeat, but one of awe and reverence. In light of the divine greatness he now clearly perceives. After this exchange between God and Job, the Lord turns to Job's three friends. After the Lord had said these things to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, "I am angry with you and your two friends, because you have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has. God commands a sacrificial offering. Now take 7 bulls and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job and sacrifice a burnt offering for yourselves. My servant Job will pray for you, and I will accept his prayer, and not deal with you according to your folly. You have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has." The friends obey. So Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite did what the Lord told them, and the Lord accepted Job's prayer. Then everything changes for Job. After Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. The restoration is complete. All his brothers and sisters and everyone who had known him before came and ate with him in his house. They comforted and consoled him over all the trouble the Lord had brought on him, and each one gave him a piece of silver and a gold ring. Job ends up with far more than he lost. The Lord blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former. He had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. His family is restored as well, and he also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. The first daughter he named Jemimah, the second Keziah, and the third Karen-Happuch. Nowhere in all the land were there found women as beautiful as Job's daughters, and their father granted them an inheritance along with their brothers. The book ends with a note on Job's long life. After this, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children and their children to the 4th generation. And so, Job died old and full of years. Job's restoration doesn't erase his former pain, but it makes it clear that suffering wasn't the final word in his story. He not only recovered what he had lost, but was blessed even more. His daughters receiving an inheritance alongside their brothers, something uncommon at the time, points to a special blessing. But most importantly, Job emerged from his trial with a deeper relationship with God. He discovered that even when we don't understand God's ways, we can still trust in His wisdom and love. His story continues to inspire those facing unexplained suffering, proving that faith can survive, even thrive through life's harshest storms. The story of Job teaches us about faith during hard times. It reminds us that we may not always understand the reason for our trials, but God is present even in our pain. As we've seen, Job lost everything, was abandoned by nearly everyone, and suffered physically. Yet he held on to his integrity. In the end, he didn't just get back what he had lost. He gained something far greater, a personal encounter with God that changed his life. If you're going through a difficult time right now, remember this. Like Job, you're not alone in your suffering. God sees your pain and is with you even when He seems far away. I hope this story touched your heart the way it touched mine. If you enjoyed this video on Job, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more biblical stories told in this way. Share it with friends and family who might need a message of hope in hard times. See you in the next video. May God bless your journey. If this story of Job has inspired or strengthened your faith, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Share this powerful message with others who need encouragement through their own trials. Together, let's explore more incredible stories from the Bible.